closed to keep out the heat. It was very silent. Everyone had gone to see the festivities, and there was not even a mongrel dog to bark. You would have thought the city was dead. She glanced at her own home, a small house of 2 stories wedged between its neighbours, and sighed despondently. Her mother and her Uncle Domingo, who lived with them, had gone with all the rest and wouldn't be back until after the bullfight. She felt very lonely and very unhappy. She hadn't the heart to go home, so she sat down at the top of the steps that led from the church door to the plaza and put down her crutch. She began to cry. Then suddenly she was overcome with grief, and with an abrupt gesture fell back on the stone platform, and burying her face in her arms sobbed as though her heart would break. The movement had given the crutch a push. The steps were narrow and steep, and it clattered down to the bottom of them. That was the last misfortune. Now she would have to crawl or slither down to fetch her crutch, for with her right leg paralysed, she couldn't walk without it. She wept disconsolately. Suddenly she heard a voice. "Why do you weep, child?" She looked up, startled, for she had heard no one approach. She saw a woman standing behind her, and it looked as though she had come out of the church, but she had just done that herself, and there had been no one there. The woman wore a long blue cloak that came down to her feet, and now she pushed back the hood that had covered her head. It looked as though she had indeed come out of the church, since it was a sin for women to enter the house of God with uncovered heads. She was fairly tall for a Spanish woman, and she was young, for there were no lines under her dark eyes, and her skin was smooth and soft. Her hair was very simply done, with a parting in the middle and tied in a loose knot on the nape of her neck. She had small, delicate features and a kindly look. The girl couldn't decide whether she was a peasant, wife perhaps of a farmer in the neighbourhood, or a lady. There was in her air a sort of homeliness, and at the same time a dignity that was somehow intimidating. A long cloak concealed the garment underneath, but as she withdrew her hood, the girl caught a brief glimpse of white and guessed that that must be the colour of her dress. "Dry your tears, child, and tell me your name." "Catalina." "Why do you sit here alone and cry when all the world has gone forth to see the reception of the bishop and his brother the captain?" "I am a cripple. I cannot walk far, Signora, and what have I to do with all these people who are so well and happy?" The lady stood behind her, and Catalina had had to turn round to speak to her. She gave a glance at the church door. "Where have you come from, Signora? I didn't see you in the church." The lady smiled, and it was a smile of such sweetness that the bitterness seemed to fade from the girl's heart. "I saw you, child. You were praying." "I was praying as I have prayed night and day since my infirmity fell upon me to the Blessed Virgin to free me of it." "And do you think she has the power to do that?" "If she so wills." There was something so benign and so friendly in the lady's manner that Catalina felt impelled to tell her sad story. It had happened when they were bringing in the young bulls for the bullfight on Easter Day, and everyone in the town had collected to see them being driven in under the safe conduct of the oxen. Ahead of them, on their prancing horses, rode a group of young nobles. Suddenly, one of the bulls escaped and charged down a side street. There was a panic, and the crowd scattered to right and left. One man was tossed, and the bull rushed on. Catalina, running as fast as her legs would carry her, slipped and fell just as the beast was reaching her. She screamed and fainted. When she came to, they told her that the bull in his mad charge had trampled over her, but had run wildly on. She was bruised, but not wounded. They said that in a little while she would be none the worse, but in a day or 2 she complained that she couldn't move her leg. The doctors examined it and found it was paralysed. They pricked it with needles, but she could feel nothing. They bled her, unpurged her, and gave her draughts of nauseous medicine, but nothing helped. The leg was like a dead thing. "But you still have the use of your hands," said the lady. "Thanks be to God, for otherwise we should..."